Good evening. Hi, it's Sandy Shellis, aka Sandra Amy on Facebook lately. Not to be incognito, just because I took it from my daughter, who uses her first two names. So I thought, why not? You know, I was bored. So welcome tonight. Um, I have been under the weather, to say the least. Um, and my friend Kollibri, wonderful person, sent me the book that he just wrote, or published. And in my travels online, because I really don't go anywhere, and I, I uh, I've read articles, I've watched interviews with him. I think he's terrific. And he's one person that I'm not old enough to be his mother. Yay. Anyway, tonight I decided that I would read the one chapter, taking on the sacred cow of big green energy, an interview with Basin and Range Watch, because it resonates with me in that where I live in my community, there's a big fight uh, against a windmill farm, which is slated to go into a very rural farming Amish community. And it's not that the people are against green energy, it's that these are the biggest windmills, I think, in New York State. They're twice the size of other windmill farms. They're very, very big. And there's a lot of environmental impact studies going on and a lot of experts in the field and on both sides, but it's a big company. It's called Inventorgy, and they do this everywhere. And I am of the opinion that we have to, of course, get off fossil fuels, and we have to think about the way we're going to change and make changes. But why does it have to be corporate business as usual changes? And that's why I'm reading this, because I think it's really important that we understand these things, what's going on out there. And this chapter beautifully illustrates some of the problems, some of the issues. And let me say hello real quick. Oh my gosh, she has anthropomorphic facility. I always do this. I'm just going to call you Anthrofax. She has to jump in the shower, so she's going to jump in the shower. So should we wait? Oh, hi, Torstein. All right, so I'm to do the little hellos to everybody, and I'm going to get started because it's not short. And Anita, hi. And Dolores, see, I always feel better when I do this. And if I can't sit through it, well, I'll just fiddle around a lot. I've got two back braces on, and this week, and I'm going to steal this term from a friend of mine. Um, it felt like for 10 days at least, I had sprained ankles all the way up and down my spine. It's not funny, but you know, I could fix myself up and do this and feel better because it really is. I say it every stream. It's an antidepressant, and it's great to see all of you. So welcome, and let's get started. Now this is the interview that Kollibri has with these people, and it's great. So really listen, okay? The deserts of the American Southwest have come under a new assault in the last decade. The few fragmented areas of these austere, rugged, yet delicate landscapes, which had managed to survive relatively intact from mining, ranching, military use, including nuclear tests, urban encroachment, and motorized recreation, are now being targeted for large scale green energy projects, many of them on public lands. Early during Obama's first term, his administration offered a wide array of federal incentives, including grants, loan guarantees, and tax breaks for renewable energy projects, ostensibly to reduce the nation's carbon footprint. Mainstream environmentalists greeted this with cheers. But as was characteristic of Obama's administration, the hope turned out to be hype. Big corporations have been the beneficiaries of his programs, and the environment is still the big loser. Basin and Range Watch is a nonprofit that operates out of Beatty, Nevada, in the Mojave Desert. Their mission is to conserve the deserts of Nevada and California and to educate the public about the diversity of life, culture, and history of the ecosystems and wild lands. Central to this mission is opposing the many large scale solar and wind projects that have been proposed in the area, a number of which have been built with deleterious consequences. In these efforts, Basin and Range Watch has found itself at odds with not just big corporations and big government, but also with the big environmental organizations who depend on funding from big nonprofits. But someone must speak for the deserts. I first heard of Basin and Range Watch in the autumn of 2014 when co founder Kevin Emmerich was quoted in a San Francisco Chronicle article about citing renewable energy in the desert. And he says to see a different chapter in the same volume. Through their website, I learned about the threats to wildlife, habitat, endangered species, aquifers, recreation areas, and scenic vistas, as well as to small scale renewable energy projects at the community level. So when I found myself in their corner of the desert in 2016, I contacted them. Way to go, Kollibri. On the drive to Beatty from the Mojave National Preserve, where I'd been camping, I found myself at a high point along Interstate 15 with a spectacular view of the Ivanpah solar electric generating system. Ivanpah is a very large scale experiment. My God, I have to pay attention. Sorry. Example of what is called a concentrated thermal solar plant. S-O, solar plant. Oh, solar plant. Okay. It functions by using mirrors. In this case, 173,500 pairs of them to focus sunlight on central towers that contain water boilers. The resulting steam turns turbines that generate electricity. Wow. The system is not carbon free in its daily operation, requiring natural gas to start it up every morning. According to Wikipedia, in 2014, the plant burned 867,740 million BTUs of natural gas, emitting 46,084 metric tons of carbon dioxide, which is nearly twice the pollution threshold at which power plants and factories in California are required to participate in the state's cap and trade program to reduce carbon emissions. If that gas had been used in a conventional fossil fuel plant, it would have generated nearly 124,000 megawatts of electrical energy. That is enough to power the annual needs of 20,660 California homes. Ivanpah is notorious for regularly killing birds by literally burning them, sometimes to the point of complete incineration when they fly through the superheated air around the tower, which can reach temperatures of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's brutal. So is the footprint of the power plant in the desert where thousands of animals and innumerable plants once had their homes. I was quite taken back by its scale. I'd seen photos, but they don't do it justice. Ivanpah has also been plagued with performance and financial issues. It has never produced as many megawatts as promised. Its power is expensive to purchase, and the entire project is in danger of defaulting. The word comes to my mind is boondoggle. The day after I saw Ivanpah, I interviewed the founders of Basin and Range Watch, Kevin Emmerich and Laura Cunningham, at their home and headquarters. What follows is a transcript of that conversation, edited for length and clarity. Okay, so I'm going to be Kollibri. All right. And I'm just going to say hi, Shiva, and hi, Natural Progressive, and Zox, and Copy Cooney, and Marsha. Thanks for coming. And let me get going because this is really good. This is really good. I mean, I was actually glued and out of myself for a while with this. So, okay, and I'll use the last names as he does in the book. So, Sonnenblume, how and why did you start Basin and Range Watch? Emmerich, we lived here for a little while, and we decided that no one was giving a lot of attention to some of the flatlands in Nevada. And some of these unknown mountain ranges, some of these unknown areas. We decided we wanted to create an educational type of website that would talk about these areas and some of the issues that face them. We got into mining issues and an off road race, which was quite controversial. In about 2008 or so, was the land rush of big solar and wind energy. The current administration, back then was Obama, they really wanted a lot of renewable energy and a lot of it on public lands and opened almost everything up to big solar and wind applications. We looked at the map of the Armagosa Valley and it was covered in applications, and we really wanted to make this an issue. Other people wanted to, but it was green. Big energy, and because it was green, big energy, it was a sacred cow. And it's something that a lot of environmental groups and environmental reporters don't really want to touch. We've been doing it for a while now, like 7 years. Now, Cunningham goes on to say, I went to Berkeley and studied biology there, and then through the years got into the field of tortoise biology. This is really where it gets fascinating. No, I'm not feeling better, Keith. It's all an illusion. um, she went into the Mojave Desert and worked as a contract biologist for these companies where you literally march along with a shovel. All this university education, and it came down to carrying a shovel. Walking within survey lines, 10 hours a day, digging out tortoise burrows, bashing creosote bushes down to the ground to get every last tortoise out of a 20 square mile area before the bulldozers come for the large projects. I learned what happens when you mitigate for tortoises. It is uglier than people think. You physically destroy desert ecosystems, and usually 50% of the tortoises die during that translocation process from stress or predation. So that's when I joined Kevin, and he's my husband now, too, she says. We saw the same things are going to happen when you build a giant solar project on 20 square miles or 10 square miles. You're going to have to hire the tortoise biologists and dig the tortoise out, and then huge earth moving machines come and just destroy this beautiful wildflower desert ecosystem. We had a big push to educate people that there's got to be a better alternatives because these desert soils store carbon for one thing, and when you bulldoze them up, it releases carbon. And all the roots and plants and mycorrhiza, and really interesting little puffball mushrooms that come up in spring like this when there has been enough rain. All this biodiversity that we're destroying when we do large scale, even renewable energy in these deserts. Did you all know this? Kollibri says. And also, what are they called? Cryptobiotic crusts? And Cunningham says, exactly! I have pictures of mosses and even little liverworts and blue-green algae, and you can see them in little patches here and there, and they'll green up in the winter rains. I asked, how are you going to mitigate that? They said, we might be able to roll them up like a lawn. Sonnenblume, laughing. Like sod. Cunningham, she's laughing. Right, like sod. Then they can put them somewhere else. But they didn't even try because they knew that wouldn't work. Sonnenblume, I think there is a misunderstanding that a lot of people have about the desert where they think, oh, it's empty. There's nothing out there. People don't see the amazing life. And Cunningham says exactly. So we would always try to write comments and say there's better alternatives. Maybe not the giant power towers, but definitely the solar voltaic panels can go on parking lot rooftop structures, even small disturbed lots in urban areas. So we've been trying to shift alternatives to the built environment, but that's been a really tough sell, and I agree with that so much. Emerlich. What's fascinating about the perception of the desert as a wasteland is the way it's morphed over the past 6 to 7 years. Whereas in 2008, when the Ivanpah solar array project was started, they were saying that the Ivanpah Valley was not worth that much because of the power line and the highway and a casino and a golf course. But these are little dots compared to the amount that they developed. They portrayed the site as having lower biodiversity because if you go to the other side of Ivanpah Valley, there were more desert tortoises. So they had to really spin that wasteland portrayal to support a lot of these larger scale energy sites as really worthless. I'm sure people bought it. But now we've got Senator Harry Reid designating the Basin and Range National Monument in Nevada. It's a really beautiful place, but there isn't a basin in Nevada that's not beautiful. It looks exactly like 5 solar energy areas that were called visually worthless and ugly. There's one up the road that I think is as beautiful as anything in the monument. We're able to point out some of this hypocrisy now. You really can't find a big piece of desert to put a giant solar farm in that's not going to be a visual clusterfuck. Sonnenblume. And that's going to affect the whole ecosystem. Emmerich. Exactly. That's true with the Ivanpah Valley. They said it was only going to be 25 desert tortoises because that's what the biologists found in a survey. But really, it turned out to be like 150. Cunningham. When they went in with the shovels and dug all the burrows, the number more than quadrupled because tortoises spend most of their life underground. Sonnenblume. Like over 90% of the time? Cunningham. Right. It was the mayor of Barstow who said at a public meeting about a proposed large scale renewable energy project. We get Chinese tourists in big buses. They come from China and get off the bus and they say, there's nothing here. They value that because they don't have that where they're from. They literally come to see nothingness, the nothingness of the great desert. Emmerich, the perception of the desert changed when people saw what happened at Ivanpah. Sonnenblume, I saw it yesterday. It's astounding. Obviously, the fossil fuel burning is a problem. Something else needs to happen. And so there's the interest in wind and solar because they are, quote, carbon free. Although they're not in the sense that there's a lot of carbon pollution involved in their production. And then there's the extraction of all the rare earth metals that are needed. Maybe you could talk about the corporate connection, making money off these things, and how people are not looking at the option of localized solutions. My heart be still. Emmerich. First off, you have to ask yourself, how many megawatts do some of these really big wind farms produce? Alcatillo, for example. They said it would produce power for 130,000 homes, but it's only running at maybe 50% of its capacity. So how much is that really replacing? As far as the last part of your question, the alternative is that we can easily get that amount of megawatts through using the developed environment. There's so much room in Vegas, for example, so much that's wasted down there. There's a big corporate tie to owning energy, and there's even a lot of solar and wind projects that are being built by British Petroleum, and a lot of people see that as a good thing here 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 are the fossil fuel giants moving into renewables and big solar. We've also got Warren Buffett getting big tax credits for building big projects. That's where the corporate ties are. There's huge tax credits for really big companies that are more interested in producing energy and making a lot of money rather than being green. Cunningham. It's not like this is us little people controlling this. We've been looking at what we call energy democracy on one side and the corporate ownership of renewables on the other. You get a lot of tax credits as a big corporation. In the past, there have been federal grants and Department of Energy loan guarantees to really help build these projects such as Ivanpah. So there's been a huge push of taxpayer money to build the central station utility plants. But on the other hand, the more distributed generation types of solar and the individual homeowners can participate in have been tamped down. Even in Nevada, there's a raging controversy right now because a lot of people want to participate in a net metering system where you get a little incentive from the utility. It's profitable for them, the utilities, because they will purchase your excess energy and sell it on the grid. It's not like they're losing money on it. The homeowner has the incentive to help pay for the rooftop solar, which is good for everybody and good for climate change. The Ivanpah project got $1 billion in incentives. A grant, free money to build the project. And actually, it was 1.6 billion. That's what Sonnenblume, he added that. But the utilities really have been pushing back on this energy democracy model and lobbying politicians, and they successfully reduced the incentives. And they're not raising the caps. They're actually caps for how many houses can have rooftop solar and be eligible for the incentive. If climate change is emergency, you would want to have no caps and get this as extensive as we can. And Sonnenblume says there's caps. There are caps, says Cunningham. In Nevada and in California. I was just reading this morning that PG&E is approaching the cap for how many houses in the PG&E utility district can participate in net metering. It's so popular. The cost of photovoltaic panels has come down so much. People are pushing to put rooftop solar panels on their houses, but there's a cap, and we're going to reach it. Then there will have to be public utility commission meetings about whether we should raise the cap. Oh, God. This gives me a headache reading it because it pisses me off. There is a big pushback from the utilities, and it's not solved yet because there are benefits that the homeowners are providing to get the grid that the utility companies benefit from. So it benefits everyone, not just the people with rooftop solar. For example, the peak time of use is right when all those rooftop solar systems are feeding electrons back into the grid when everyone's air conditioner is running. These arguments that utilities won't have to construct so many natural gas peaker plants to keep up with peak time of day. It helps stabilizing the grid, having these distributed systems everywhere. It parallels local, organic, urban gardening, small systems that are infilling in urban areas. You don't have to truck produce and vegetables miles and miles. Rooftop solar is the same thing. You don't have to build a 500 kilowatt transmission line 300 miles long. That Ivanpah transmission line to LA, they had to upgrade it, and all the ratepayers had to pay for that. So there's an interesting parallel between local food production and local energy production. We're trying to explore this, but it's hard when you have the big utility companies pushing back on you. And people don't realize the facts about these transmission lines. When I was a biologist, I took a safety class because I was going to work for one of the utilities. They built a 500 kilovolt transmission line, giant metal towers to get the wind power from Tecapa. Wait, here we go again. to copy past to LA. I'm so sorry. I'm so bad at pronouncing words. Mm. People don't realize what that takes. I was amazed at the amount of impact that has. They had to build it through this beautiful Joshua tree forest in the West Mojave Desert, and they just took out hundreds of trees. You know, I almost cried when I first read that this morning. Hundreds of trees. I had a friend who worked on it. There were Joshua trees she couldn't even put her arms around. Their trunks were so big, and they knocked them over. They killed them to get these towers through. They tried to salvage some, but they mostly didn't. Then they needed to get this transmission line over the San Gabriel Mountains, which is huge, rugged, steep, rough mountain range, and that involved helicopters putting in towers and blasting the sharper ridges. One of the biologists died because he fell off a cliff while he was monitoring the impact. So people were dying building these renewable projects. There's a human impact. It had to go through the city of Chino, and the whole city of Chino said no. We don't want this giant transmission line plowing right through our neighborhoods. So the city of Chino sued Southern California Electric, and they lost. They used eminent domain through Chino. There's quite a lot of impacts that people aren't even aware of for green energy. Sonnenblume. The transmission lines lose energy along the way, too, right? Yes, about 10%, Cunningham said. Sonnenblume. So everything that leaves Ivanpah doesn't arrive in LA. When it's coming from your own roof, you're losing essentially nothing. Cunningham, that's right. And Ivanpah produces so little, you don't want to lose 10%. Cunningham, yep. They've been having trouble. What you're seeing in the valley is one giant concentrated solar plant, and there's two photovoltaic plants next to it. When clouds come over, even just one little cloud over the sun, it shuts the whole plant down. So that's a benefit of distributed generation. Also, all the solar rooftops in the city interconnected with microgrids on the whole grid. It dissipates that cloud cover loss. Obviously, there are still things that need to be worked out. We get a lot of pushback from people saying it's too hard to do rooftop solar. And there are problems, but when we look at these large scale projects out there, they have enormous projects to overcome. Ivanpah has never been at 100%. This is good, isn't it? Man, Sonnenblume. Is that typical of one of these large scale projects? Solar and wind? Both? Emmerich. Rich. Here we go again. It's not been uncommon for the concentrated solar thermal plants like Ivanpah and the Solaris plant in Arizona. With photovoltaic, the jury's out. They say overbuild them so they can get more megawatts on cloudy days, but I just don't know. They have a peak time of day when they can sell energy, and everyone's competing for that. Cunningham. The wind projects, too, have often been built in low wind resource areas, and they're running very low. The siting for large wind and solar has often been as close to existing transmission lines as possible. Not asking, are there tortoises here, or bats, or golden eagles, or even wind? It's often been just ease of transmission. A lot of these, Emmerich, a lot of this projects have facilitated the need to build base load natural gas plants like Sentinel near desert hot springs. It's used as a backup for the big renewable projects that were built to the east. Natural gas plants don't have as big of a land footprint, but they have a big smog footprint. The big thing is going to be energy storage. Energy storage for renewables is a long ways away. The best one, and this is in 2016, remember, the best one so far is hydroelectric, but they don't really have what I would call a holy grail. They have this plant north of us called Crescent Dunes, and it's a tower like the Ivanpah power plant, but they have storage in it in the form of molten salt. And that's a big deal to be able to do that. But they needed a $730 million loan, and they were over budget, and it took 10 years to complete it. They're not going to be able to build 1 million of these molten salt towers worldwide without funding. That's the future. Where's the storage of energy? Sonnenblume. Right. Because people who have solar panels on their cabin or whatever have batteries they charge up, and it's like that on a larger scale too. Cunningham. Right. Sonnenblume. There's a storage project I read about on your website, planned near Joshua Tree National Park, in the final stages of approval. I can't remember what it's called. And Cunningham says, Eagle Mountain. It's ridiculous. It's a giant old mine pit, and they want to fill it and make a huge reservoir. And then they would, there's a fly in my house. And then they would drill these giant tunnels through the rock, and they would pump water using excess wind and solar from the large scale projects into the upper pool. But then they would let it go through tunnels to turn turbines like a dam. But we're like, where are they going to get all this water? This is an enormous reservoir in the middle of a desert, and there's barely enough water for farms and residences down there. Sonnenblume. The National Park Service is opposed to it. Cunningham, completely opposed to it. Emmerich, it's supposed to be fossil water. Cunningham, right, ice age water. Emmerich, they will lose hundreds of acre feet a year. Cunningham, through evaporation. Emmerich, and seepage. Sonnenblume, there's several dozen oases left in Joshua Tree National Park, and they're getting their water from fissures in the crust where this ancient water comes up, and that's why they're there. And these oases are fascinating places because that was the dominant ecosystem millions of years ago. These are little relic areas that have managed to survive all this time, and now that's the threat to them. This is the concern of the Park Service, in part, that a falling water table in the area will kill them off. And Cunningham says for a very small amount of storage capacity. Emmerich, that one has a good amount of backup capacity. The issue is the amount of water it will use. But the question is, do they even have a need for it? Have they even figured out? Oh, I lost my place. I'm so sorry. That's what happens when you have a phone on too. Um, oh, do they even have a need for it? Have they even figured out who will use it? Nobody has. Sonnenblume, isn't there a perversity where not all of these projects are actually responding to a specific demand? Some of them are occurring because there's money in building them. Cunningham, yeah, there used to be these American Recovery and Reinvestment Act era giants, and they would literally give hundreds of millions to these projects, and we think it forced them to build too big. Ivanpah has had a huge number of problems because it was scaled so gigantically because money was funneled into it to make it gigantic. You could build really small power towers that are 50 feet tall, and they could be distributed in empty lots in cities. Same technology. But that wasn't charismatic enough for politicians. They wanted something really big and showy. There's always big problems, and it's been expensive to solve them. So we're always looking for small and in the built environment. And energy efficiency. We should be doing energy efficiency. Oh my goodness, why does my phone keep ringing? We should be doing energy efficiency before any of this, but that wasn't on the radar. You know what? You give me a second. I'm going to shut this thing off. The reason why I keep it on is because I usually check on how my internet connection is. Because my internet connection is shitty, a lot of times. So there's my little it's not even shutting off. Oh, technology. And I want to get through this because I think it's so good. And then I got to find my place because of the stinking phone. Okay, it's off. We will not get disrupted. Sorry, guys, but I'm on break. No, actually, you know who's calling Osama? Doug. So probably it'll be like, well, what were you doing? Okay, reading to my friends. So here we are. We're going to go back. We went back to, okay, same technology and the politicians. Okay, Sonnenblume. Like insulation, double paned windows, the basics. Cunningham. Yes, the basics. But it's been backwards. You have these huge centralized power plants that have been really slow to produce, but they look good and everyone's impressed. The glittering mirrors dazzle reporters. Then it's been very slow on the side, where homes are made more energy efficient and we improve our grid in the city to be able to handle more renewable energy. Sonnenblume. How much would they have to do with solar and wind to replace a significant portion of coal, for example? What would that look like? Cunningham. I have been studying the possibility of 100% renewables, and I don't think we're capable of it. Germany thinks it could get to 60% or 80%, and they're not sure how they would get to 100%. Again, we need to reduce our usage of electricity, which we're not talking about. Our high standard of living is a real obstacle, and I'm guilty, guys. Kevin and I talk to engineers, and they are always telling us this is going to be a very heavy lift if we're going to keep our very high standard of living. Emmerich. Aspen, Colorado gets something like 75% of their energy from renewables, but that's because they have a dam right there. And I'll take a little break because where I live, we get 87% from hydro from Niagara Falls. I'm up there. Okay, Sonnenblume. And dams, they have their own issues. Oh, yeah. Cunningham. We totally don't support more dams blocking salmon. Salmon are almost extinct in California, so that's the last thing that's green is to dam more rivers. We don't want to do that. Hydro isn't exactly the greenest form of energy, but that might be the only way to get to 100% because you can control how much water is let out, and that will be a big balance to the intermittent peaks for wind and solar. Emmerich. What about the carbon footprint of the big renewable projects like Blythe Solar Energy Project? That was going to be a horizontal parabolic trowel plant with mirrors, and there was going to be 4 units, and they were bragging how this plant is going to use as much steel as it took to build the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm like, whoa, that's one hell of a carbon footprint, but we're going to save the planet from global warming. We were morbidly fascinated at the construction of the Ivanpah project, and I hung out there a couple of times at quitting time, and there were 200 cars leaving work, and some were going to Barstow, over 100 miles away. Oh, wait, I got to say hi to somebody. Hi, Elm. Elm is joining us from the Outback. I don't know if you're in the bush, but thanks for coming from Australia. Okay, where were we? All right. Cunningham, we're trying to study life cycle impacts of these projects. Even rooftop solar, there are impacts to any energy used. Battery mines, the lithium mines north of here, near to the town of Silver Peak, which, and Sonnenblume says this is the one that Elon Musk and Tesla are involved in? Yeah, he increased production for his gigafactory up in Reno to produce the advanced lithium batteries. They're great. We like them. But there are impacts. These huge, beautiful basins with playas and playas have a lot of materials in them. And to increase the mineral extraction from these playas, they're putting in new wells all over and pumping groundwater like crazy. Now they're flooding new areas to try to evaporate lithium out of the salts. Again, there's resource extraction. We're mining lithium to make batteries. Kevin and I are definitely into solar. We are solar energy advocates and renewable energy advocates, but we need to be aware of all the impacts of our lifestyle. Again, it would be really nice to reduce our use and recycling the batteries. Do they just get dumped into a canyon in Mexico, or do they really get recycled? Emmerich, that's the big deal about these big projects. They have an impact. They have a big carbon footprint. It's almost hypocritical to say the Ivanpah project is offsetting anything. Cunningham, they shipped those garage door sized mirrors, hundreds of thousands of them from Germany. There's a carbon impact there. We're trying to ask what the carbon offset would be. Building this big plant that scrapped up the biological soil crust which stores carbon, all the shipping and transportation carbon costs, the metal, the cement. Sonnenblume. It starts in the red, basically, is what you're saying. So, how long does it have to be up and running before it's made up for what it cost carbon wise? Cunningham, yes, there are people trying to study that, but right now it's a big experiment. So, we're saying slow down bulldozing the desert until we understand what we're losing. And Sonnenblume says, first, do no harm. And Cunningham says, right. Now, that was fantastic. Now, there's an addendum. Let me see how long we've been on. 41 minutes. There is an update, and they spoke in August 6, 2019. Would you like me to continue? It's very short, and then we'll have a little discussion. And because I'm having difficulty sitting, but I have two back braces on, so I think I can do it with my little helper. Like I said, it's only another page and a half. Okay, so mhm. This is my legal stuff. Don't worry, it's not hurting my lungs. And even if it is, who gives a crap? On August 6, 2019, I spoke with Cunningham and Emmerich on the phone for a quick take on what's changed since Trump took office. Oh boy. Sonnenblume. When Trump was elected, one of the very first thoughts I had was, well, this guy's against renewable energy, so maybe he'll cancel a lot of programs that are tearing up the desert. And if he doesn't slow the stuff down, then we would know that it wasn't about renewable energy in the first place, that it was about getting money to corporations. That's a very good question, Emmerich says, and it's complicated, but I can take a stab at it. When Trump got elected, renewable energy on all levels did take a hit. Big projects on public lands were not really approved for a little over a year because they were reevaluating them. They did this for two reasons, in my opinion. Reason number one is that the administration is very fossil fuel biased. Reason number two was that they wanted to rewrite everything that the Obama administration did. Also, the Trump administration proposed a lot of different tariffs on solar panels, and that made it difficult for some of the projects to be affordable or as affordable as they expected. They threatened to pull some tax credits as well. However, there were ways they helped too, inadvertently. There's so much opposition to the Trump administration that a lot of states went ahead with their own programs. California passed 100% renewable energy RPS, which is a renewables portfolio standard. Nevada passed a 50% renewable portfolio standard, which actually accelerated applications for big solar with some wind. They did this as part of a backlash against Trump. An RPS requires utilities to procure a minimum percentage of their energy from sources that are certified by the state as renewable. In the case of California, the goal is to reach 100% by 2045, which is what Kollibri put in. Some of the public land projects that are being proposed and most likely will be built are taking advantage of the Trump administration's streamlining of environmental reviews. Sorry, I'm moving around. So the answer is yes and no. The Trump administration did slow it down, but they removed a lot of regulations that were tooled to slow these things down. So it's so complicated. Bloom. So it sounds to me like some of the direct encouraging like the funding, the tax help, etc., was discouraged, but that the loosening of the regulations turned around and encouraged it. The same way that his loosening of regulations is encouraging oil exploration. Emmerich, definitely. Renewable energy projects under the Interior Department are called infrastructure projects. That's why they get the treatment. Any kind of energy project, oil, gas, renewables, is infrastructure. Cunningham, yes. So Trump isn't giving particular companies giant grants and the Department of Energy loan guarantees like Obama was, but the price of solar panels has come down so much that they can pretty much build without all the incentives. They still get a tax incentive, and Congress has to vote to renew that pretty soon. But Trump is basically saying we want all of the above energy, including renewable, because it's capitalism. So now we're seeing a whole spate of new projects in the last year. It's not as fast as it was in 2010, but it's definitely becoming a problem for public lands and desert tortoise now, even under Trump. All the big green groups are supporting bulldozing the Mojave Desert still. They haven't learned anything in 10 years. So Basin and Range Watch is again fighting this one by ourselves. It's like business as usual. I'm going to put some links in, I hope. Sonnenblume. When it comes to environmental issues, there's been a real lack of resistance to what Trump's administration is doing. Cunningham. Yeah. Emmerich. Yes. I'm a little baffled by that. Maybe people are accepting more or think they can't do anything. One theory I have is that it's really going to help a lot of Democrats, developer Democrats, to roll back a lot of regulation. And when I see some environmental groups getting behind a large build out of environmental energy here in Nevada, a lot of them don't know the regulations like they should. Cunningham. It's troubling too because we're seeing Trump rolling back all these energy efficiency policies and regulations. And then, meanwhile, all the national green groups are not, for the most part, lobbying to push for rooftop solar, distributed generation, energy storage, and energy efficiency. They seem to be laser focused on getting like a Gemini solar project on 7,000 acres of desert tortoise habitat to fight climate change. The people we know are not saying we need energy efficiency, we need rooftop solar, we need to preserve our desert lands which sequester carbon. We have Trump attacking energy efficiency and very few environmental groups trying to rescue that, like it's too boring or something. To me, it's a little hypocritical. We're absolutely going to need to do that to lower our carbon footprint. That was great. That was great. I loved it. And I'm going to read the rest of the book. I am in mega pain, guys. Like, you have no idea. Being a chronic pain patient just sucks. But I would like to just find in the book, Kollibri Terre Sonnenblume is a writer, photographer, tree hugger, animal lover, and political dissident who has been living on the west coast of the United States till 2001. He farmed from 2005 to 14, making a living with an urban CSA and a seed and herb company. And he's had previous books, The Failures of Farming and the Necessity of Wild Tending. And I'll put up some links if I'll try to do that tonight. So let's see who's here and get a couple. Oh, Jilly Love joined us. Hi, Jilly. Thanks for coming. Uh, I thought this was fabulous. Kollibri, thank you for letting me read this to our audience, and hopefully it will be shared and we can get your book out there to more people that need to read things like this. People who just push an agenda without understanding the ramifications. It's so critical. And what was articulated there was what I've been thinking but couldn't articulate. I'm against corporate. I don't want big corporations. I think a lot of us share the same feelings. We want to get out of business as usual. We want rooftop solar. We want what's controllable by the individual. We want localized farming. We want to stop. And I read about what's happening. North Carolina, the Chinese company that owns Smithfield Farms, and they're just destroying the land to sell to China. And that was on yesterday. I guess Trump was giving out, whoever knows what he was giving out, some bullshit while the Kurds are going to friggin' be killed. And they're going to lie to us about taking the troops out of there or bringing them home. Anyway, Ed, hi Ed. Yeah, he'd very much like to read the book. Good, I'm glad. And I will have Kollibri on with me when I feel better. And next Tuesday night, I canceled something last night because I couldn't even walk. This today was the first day I could walk straight. So I will have Tuesday night Alex Lanzos from Disaster Recovery. He is amazing. Okay. And I will get some stuff in. Karen's with us, Karen and Basil. Thank you, Karen. Great read. It really was. I think this whole book is just going to be fantastic for me. I'm not finished with it yet. So, let's see. Harley says, when is the last time a Democrat rolled back legislation? I don't think they typically do. I don't know though. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say they've rolled back anything because I don't have the statistics. And I am, I didn't read this as a partisan, particularly for me, partisan. I read it as a wake-up call so that maybe somebody that's listening or that will get the book because of this will understand there's two sides to this story. Absolutely. So we have been on for 52 minutes. Let's see. And hi, Harley, by the way. I didn't say hi. Oh, everybody says, so sorry, I'm in pain. All right, Karen, I know you know. Aw, Chris says, nice to hear you tonight. Yeah, it's nice to do this because, I mean, the alternative was laying around feeling sorry for myself. And I don't like to do that because I'm not a victim, as I always say. As I always say. Let's see. Harley said, it's time for our global society to go. Nothing we do on scale is renewable. Earth might be able to support a few million people spread out, minding their own damn business, not trying to grow. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Um, and Osama says, Anthony, Renogy 100-watt, 12-volt, monos crystalline solar panel 100-watt, 12-volt, $99 on eBay. See, I want to get the solar panels, but now I'm like, piss poor broke. And I am changing a course in life. So if anyone wants to help us put solar panels here, come on up because we have no clue of what we're doing. Kim, she rushed home. Yeah, well, you'll have to listen. You know what, Kim? Get a beer, glass of wine, lay in bed and listen to me read it. It's a really good chapter. And then get the book. And anthrophax, that's what I'm calling you. I've had 5 bad days in a row, but I don't think it is as bad as yours. Rest up. Listen, a lot of us suffer. It's part of the human experience. We suffer. For whatever reason, I have a spine that is just not good. Other people have other things. But those of us that are, motivated to not sit in depression and not feel sorry for ourselves, we find something, we find things to do. For me, it's the voice. And then my husband, it's growing vegetables and, it's just those things, living rurally and trying to have a lower footprint. It's hard because you have to have money to have a lower footprint somewhat. But that's a whole other story. And Copy Cooney says, I'm just going to love my grandchildren and face what comes best I can. Nothing can really be done, it seems. And I hate to have that, doomer attitude, but in the big picture, I don't think with the tipping points that in the feedback loops and what we've reached, I don't think we do. But we have to live between here and then. And we might as well live as clean and green and local and degrowth, make things smaller. Try to get our agenda out. Try, because we have an extinction rebellion around the world now that's growing. For the first time, I feel excited. I wish I could be out there. My passion would be, it would be amazing. I just couldn't stand up or walk one. But there are those that are. And because they are, kudos to all of you. And thank you for being here. And I'm not giving hopium, although I've changed the word from a negative connotation to a positive connotation. To me, hopium doesn't mean you're medicating yourself on hope. Hopium is just something that I think is a good thing. You need some hope for today. We all know what's happening. We all know what tomorrow's going to bring. I know it's going to be much harder for my 31-year-old, she just turned 31-year-old daughter. It's going to be harder for all the young people. It is what it is. And you know what? I'm going to end with live clean and green with as much grace as you can muster. I think that's a good one to end with. Good night, sweethearts. So happy you all came. Don't forget, I will have Kollibri on next Tuesday night. I will be with Alex, but it'll probably be on Facebook unless I figure out how to do Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. And tomorrow night, Natural Progressive. Peace. Good night.